Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 7 running back starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be going over news around the National Football League that pertains to fantasy football, then going over the matchups going into Week 7 at the running back position, then going over my highly anticipated top 36 running back rankings on the week. As you all know, rankings are always subject to change, and there are always going to be timestamps down in the description, so go and check that out. Also, another reminder, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community, get that cursor past Saquon Gilmore, cornerback of the New England Patriots. Click that subscribe button, click the bell notification button to be staying up to date on my latest content, live streams, Sunday mornings, 8:30 PST, every single Sunday for the rest of the season. And also, don't forget to click that like button. Hey guys, how's it going? All right, so we're talking about running backs. We're talking about Week 7. As you guys got a little bit of a taste of the running back position rest of season yesterday with that video, we're going to be going over kind of similar things. We're going to be talking about matchups, talking about who I believe is going to have better weeks coming into Week 7, and etc. But before we get into that, let me talk about some pieces of information in terms of news. Emmanuel Sanders, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos, who was injured this past Sunday and left the game and did not return, is slated to potentially play this coming Thursday. Now, I know many of you Emmanuel Sanders owners are not excited about the prospect of playing him, but at least you know for certain that he's potentially not going to miss a third season in a row due to an injury. Again, this is a older gentleman at the wide receiver position. What is he, like 31, 32 at this point, coming off of two season-ending injuries. So obviously, any injury is concerning for his health going forward. But either way, Courtland Sutton's the number one moving forward with that offense. Other than that, in terms of news, hopefully Saquon will be playing this week. That's why I have a number one over there. He was practicing yesterday, so was Evan Ingram, so that is always exciting. N'Keal Harry, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, who has been on the IR injured reserve for all of the season thus far, has been practicing today. So that should be great going forward. Other pieces of news. In terms of last night, Monday Night Football, very interesting game. A lot of bad calls by referees. But hey, that's just how the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, if you're a Lions fan, you want that game back because you know that's a W. But yeah, it happens. In terms of waiver wire targets, there are a couple names that I wanted to bring up. Jamaal Williams, not a bad name. If Devontae Adams continues to miss time, and in fact, Geronimo Allison is going to miss this following week, Lazard, a good wide receiver there, especially late in that fourth quarter, was making a lot of plays, saw a lot of targets in that fourth quarter span from Aaron Rodgers, and was able to step up to the opportunity and grab it by the horns and really produce and help that team pick up a W. So those are two guys that can be big, big pickups this week. Also, Chris Herndon, who was dealing with a hamstring injury last week, has officially been activated by the Jets, so he should be coming back and contributing for that team going forward. Those are all little pieces of information that we have gathered here on Tuesday, October 15th. But moving on, let's talk about the running backs. And going into Week 7, let's talk about the matchups at the position as we typically do. Many of you, this is pretty familiar. Yesterday, we talked about exactly this. But either way, when we're talking about matchups at the running back position, we always want to play running backs against the Miami Dolphins this week. It's gonna be the combination of Frank Gore and Devin Singletary. As to who is going to be the starting back, it'll probably be Frank Gore for the next couple weeks until Devin Singletary can come back and establish himself. We have to remember he's coming off a hamstring injury. They are also coming off of a bye week, so Devin Singletary should be fully healthy, and they both should be viable running backs out of this backfield. But again, Frank Gore, as of right now, is the starting back going into this current matchup. Number two, the team giving up the second most points to opposing running backs, the Cincinnati Bengals. There's a reason why Leonard Fournette, running back of the Jaguars, is on the thumbnails, because he gets to play against the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that's giving up 32.21 fantasy points to opposing running backs on average per week in half-point PPR. That's just easy pickings. As of right now, that matchup should be fun. The Detroit Lions have to play against Dalvin Cook. Should be a great matchup there. Josh Jacobs gets his hands on the Green Bay Packers. who have been actually pretty decent at stopping the run, especially against Kerryon Johnson yesterday. Really didn't give him many opportunities to make any plays there, except for in the passing game. The Washington Redskins are going to get run all over by the combination of Coleman and Breida. That's always going to be fun. We're going to see Cleveland on a bye week this week. The Jaguars have to play against Mixon. Mixon hasn't looked great all season long. He has an opportunity to turn it around, but I don't think that that's going to go that way. We'll talk about exactly why that is the case later on in today's episode. And then we go again and we find a couple of these other teams, right? The Kansas City Chiefs cannot stop us all defensively. We have already established that they are a team that in the last couple weeks have been getting destroyed on the ground. That's why I think in this short week against the Denver Broncos in Denver, Phillip Lindsay becomes a extremely vital part of this offense, and he's the key to winning this game for the Broncos. He has to dictate the game with the offensive line. Him and Royce Freeman have a very good opportunity this week to take advantage of a very easy matchup. The Chargers been getting torched on the ground, speaking of Lindsay, by Lindsay and by James Conner this past couple weeks. And then the Giants get to play against David Johnson. In terms of the more difficult matchups, the Arizona Cardinals, typically because of the fact that they're getting torched through the air, is why they're having difficulties. I don't believe that they are that good of a defense, and they're not going to be able to stop Saquon Barkley if he's playing this week. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts coming off a bye week. We have Tennessee. We have the Raiders. We have the Vikings, Saints, Eagles, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Patriots. As of right now, there are a couple players in that group like Adrian Peterson that you will not see on today's episode, because I do believe after what I witnessed the San Francisco 49ers do for the last couple weeks in terms of their defense and the presence that defensive line has and the amount of chaos and havoc that they produce on the field, it's going to be difficult for a guy like Adrian Peterson, especially considering he couldn't even produce that well against the Miami Dolphins. Now he has the task of taking on the best run defense in the National Football League, obviously next to the New England Patriots. That's always a tough ask. But either way, these are the matchups going into Week 7 of the fantasy football season for the running back position, just to kind of give you guys some perspective. And let's go ahead and move on, and let's talk about today's meat and potatoes of the episode. Let's talk about the rankings 1 through 12, my RB1s on the week, guys that you can start and hopefully not have to worry about on the week, and hopefully they can produce. There are always going to be players that, end up having, poor weeks, and always have players that have monster weeks, but hopefully we could try to dwindle it down and put you in the correct position to try to make another W happen this coming weekend. All right, again, rankings are always subject to change, and if you're looking for a specific player, you can go down in the description and check out the timestamps, click on them for the specific players you're looking for. While you're down there, you can check out the Patreon page if you want all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about my 1 through 12 rankings, my RB1s. On the week, number 1, Saquon Barkley. I do believe he is going to be playing earlier this week. If I'm not mistaken, it was on Sunday or Monday. Saquon Barkley put out a tweet, said, "I will be returning soon." That is always good to hear. And the fact that he was practicing yesterday and participating today is a great sign into seeing that potentially Saquon Barkley will make his return here in Week 7 against the Arizona Cardinals at home this week. That's a combination for success. He's coming back early, so the injury obviously wasn't as severe as initially anticipated. Now that we have Saquon Barkley coming back, not only does it help Daniel Jones, not only does it help the value of an Evan Ingram or a Golden Tate, everyone in this team is going to have a boost of potential. And also, for those of you who have stuck around and had Saquon Barkley, if you've been able to string together some W's as of late, he's only coming back to have one of the best end-of-season strength of schedules that are out there as of right now. We talked about it yesterday. If you haven't checked out that video, go and check that out. But as of right now, in this week against the Cardinals, I do not think they are a capable enough defense to stop this offense. Saquon's my number 1. All right, moving on to number 2, Dalvin Cook playing against the Lions. Dalvin Cook hasn't been the main piece of this offense in terms of production in the last couple of weeks. That has typically been, Adam Thielen 2 weeks ago, and then we had Stephon Diggs this past week. Both of those guys having double, Stephon Diggs had 3 touchdowns, and the week before, Adam Thielen had 2 touchdowns. So all in all, this offense, they've been able to get more balanced. But once they get back to the grindstone, once they get back to feeding the ball to Dalvin Cook, we are going to see a big burst of production. And I think that's what we're going to see this week. I understand the Lions are hurting for a W after that loss last night, but I do believe Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings have a potential to come out here and make a statement game and potentially vie for a spot in the playoffs as a team that is currently a contender. So either way, Dalvin Cook, he's my number 2 this week. Moving on to number 3, David Johnson. Speaking of the Cardinals game a little bit earlier, in the same breath, in the same wind, I certainly believe that yes, the Cardinals can't stop anybody defensively, and I don't think they're that good. But the Giants are even worse defensively, and the Giants have had one of the worst defenses in the National Football League thus far this season, and it is not getting any better. Yes, they were able to produce pretty decently last week against Tom Brady. They're National Football League players. These are professional athletes, and they are training weekly, and they are preparing weekly for games. So obviously they're going to be able to produce, but I do still think that a guy like David Johnson going forward looked healthy. 20-plus points, has looked fantastic thus far this season with the implementation of him in the passing game, something that we've seen him do this year more than he even did last year. It's absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to continue to see him produce as of right now against this matchup, which is pretty fair for him. He's my number 3. Moving on to number 4, Leonard Fournette, the thumbnail himself, playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, I mentioned about 5 minutes ago, the Cincinnati Bengals give up the second most points to opposing running backs on a weekly basis. And yeah, sure, I think no matter what, Leonard Fournette is running all over this team. Because if you think about the offense of the Jaguars, it's all surrounded around Leonard Fournette. Sure, you have Chark and you have Minshew and you have Conley all contributing. You've had a couple injuries with the tight end position, especially the last 2 weeks. But certainly, Leonard Fournette is the key to this offense. They need to get him going, and certainly last week wasn't, what they were expecting, especially against the Saints in a close game. But this coming week, he should be able to have a monster performance. I expect him to do so. And Leonard Fournette, you're my number 4. Moving on to number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. Now, Ezekiel Elliott sits at the number 5 spot, not only because he plays the Eagles, who are great against the run, especially against opposing running backs, but he is still missing his right and left tackle, Lyle Collins, the right tackle, left tackle, Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith's an all-pro. When you're missing talent like that up front, it is going to hurt. If, in fact, Amari Cooper is also out, there is going to be less of an opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys to be able to take advantage of said matchup. Yes, Kirk Cousins was able to completely destroy the secondary of the Eagles, who has not been good for the last 2 seasons. A lot of teams don't understand that all they need to do is key in on that secondary. Ronald Darby is not someone that can lock down a number 1 wide receiver. Absolutely not. So if you can potentially have Cooper and Gallup out there, we're going to see production. I mean, wasn't it just last year we saw Amari Cooper have 3 receiving touchdowns against the Philadelphia Eagles late in the season? If I'm not mistaken, it's just been a common thing that the Eagles cannot stop the pass, but they're great against the run. The issue is the offensive line's beat up. Ezekiel Elliott might not be given too many carries, especially if he starts getting shut down early and the Eagles take a lead. He might get some work in the passing game, but unless he sees more than he's currently, I'm a little worried about the situation. That's why I have him at 5. I'm not saying you don't start Ezekiel Elliott. That is absolutely not the case. You are starting him, but in terms of my rankings, who would I rather start over who? There you go. Either way, you're starting all of these guys. What are we talking about, all right? Too much time. I'm going to spend less time on players. Here we go. Derrick Henry, number 6. All right, the Chargers don't know how to play defense. The Chargers don't know how to play offense. No matter what their coaches say, oh yeah, we're pissed off. We want to get W's. Okay, congratulations. Marcus Mariota pretty much is on the he's at his wit's end in terms of his career in Tennessee. If in fact Marcus Mariota is given the starting position this week, which I think Mike Vrabel, the head coach, said that he would decide that on Monday. I have yet to hear any information on whether or not they're starting him or not. Maybe that's perhaps because they are yet to decide. But either way, I think Derrick Henry, after coming off of a poor performance, really needs to get back on track, and you can absolutely do so against the Chargers, a defense that is not good against the run. And I do believe Derrick Henry, it's only a matter of time until he pops off. The cork is ready to pop. So he's ready to go. He's at my number 6 spot this week. Moving on to number 7, Chris Carson, a guy that has been given 20 touches every single week in the last 3 weeks. Rashad Penny has been missing time due to that hamstring injury, and it does not matter because Chris Carson is an elite running back in the National Football League. He continues to see a lot of work on the ground, has unbelievable offensive line in front of him. In terms of having an offensive line in which you don't know any of the names of the offensive line in front of him. I mean, obviously we know DeJuan Brown, we know DJ Fluker, we know, I'm going to forget the guard's name. Ooh, you see? See what I'm talking about? I'm going to forget the guard's name. I want to remember it, but I don't. Damn. Okay. But either way, in terms of having an offensive line that doesn't have any standout all-pros, they are still a good run-blocking team, and it's incredible. Now that you lost Disley, it's going to hurt, but they're going to rely more upon the running game going forward, I believe. Either way, against the Ravens this week, I don't think the Ravens defensively have been great. Sure, they played against the Bengals last week, but defensively have not been great thus far this season. And Chris Carson will be able to take advantage of that. He's my number 7. Moving on to number 8. Here's the thing about Alvin Kamara, okay, guys? For those of you who own Alvin Kamara, you certainly know at this point that he is not being... Oh my goodness. He has not produced up to par as to what you expected him to do. You drafted him as the second or third. I got to fix this. Give me a second. Can this fix? Okay. You drafted him as the second or third running back off the board. Maybe even you drafted him as your number 1 overall pick in your draft. But as of right now, he has not been able to produce in this offense. We have to go back and remember, a lot of Alvin Kamara's fantasy production had to do with goal line opportunities and scoring touchdowns, which he has not done as of late. I expect a little bit of course correction. I expect it to get balanced, and I expect the rest of the season to be a lot of Alvin Kamara finding the end zone. He sits in my number 8 spot this week because, hey, you know what? The Bears, even though Josh Jacobs, I still think they're a good defense. They will right the ship, and I think it's going to be more difficult for Kamara. He needs more implementation in the passing game. He's been dealing with an ankle injury. We saw a lot more Latavius Murray last week, so we're going to take it easy, but he's still number 8. Moving on to number 9, Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay gets to play against the Chiefs on Thursday night. The Chiefs just gave up 150 yards plus to Carlos Hyde of all running backs. You cannot tell me that the Houston Texans offense with Carlos Hyde is capable of running for 150 and that Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman aren't going to bust for 200 combined. I fully believe they are going to. And they might even, this might be a trap game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, you're like, Andrew, no, relax. I'm telling you guys, the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs don't even target Travis Kelce scares me, right? I don't know what's wrong with this Chiefs team, but as of right now, this Broncos team has a very good opportunity this week. I love Phillip Lindsay in this week's matchup. He's my number 9. Moving on to 10, Josh Jacobs plays against Green Bay, coming off of a bye week. They've been preparing for the Green Bay Packers for the last 2 weeks. After they came back from that London game, that's all that they've had their key focus on. They're going to take apart this defense. This offensive line is going to batter people up front. And I think Josh Jacobs is going to have himself a great week once again here. Either way, as long as Josh Jacobs continues to get work in the passing game, hopefully we're trending towards that direction. We didn't see much in the first 4 weeks of the season. If we can get him more implemented in this offense, less touches to guys like DeAndre Washington or Jalen Richard, make him a full 3-down back and never take him out, then we'll see him be on this top 12 list every single week from here on out. Moving on to number 11, Todd Gurley. If in fact he is healthy, which I expect him to be, he's got that quad contusion that hopefully by now has kind of cleared itself up. Obviously, it's a lot of pain, and pain management is it's up to him. If in fact he doesn't play, I still do believe a guy like Malcolm Brown is a top 15 back. Or Darrell Henderson, maybe whether they decide Darrell Henderson did look good, but whether they decide one or the other, I do think if Todd Gurley plays, he's my 11 back, certainly. So I don't mind him against the Falcons. Really good matchup, especially for the offense of the Rams, who need a lot of help as of right now. Moving on to my last running back in my top 12, we have Le'Veon Bell. Even though Le'Veon Bell has to play on Monday Night Football, which, if I'm not mistaken, on that Monday Night Football game, there's going to be a Star Wars trailer for this next Star Wars movie. So only time will tell on that one. But speaking of that Monday night game, it will be in New York. They will be playing against the Patriots. The last time the Patriots played against this Jets team, there was no Sam Darnold. There was no Chris Herndon. And to be honest, the offense was completely it evaporated. So going into this game this week, I do believe it is going to be a different scheme in terms of, hey, you can't just one-dimensionally stop the passing game and then expect Le'Veon Bell not to get some work. He's going to work on the ground. He's going to get work through the air. And I do believe no matter what, Le'Veon Bell is going to be a viable back. This might be, this is technically, in terms of his rest of the season schedule, this is the toughest matchup going forward. But I still think he's going to find production here. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about my RB2s on the week. My 13 through 24 rankings, starting off with number 13, Marlon Mack, coming off of a bye week. Marlon Mack has produced an incredible amount thus far this season. He's had 2 big games. This past week, he was on a bye week this past week, but in week 5, had a monster game against the Chiefs. In week 1 against the Chargers, had a monster game. If in fact they can give him those opportunities and they can get into game scripts in which they're continuously having to run the ball, Marlon Mack is an extremely good running back. I do believe this week the Colts are going to give the Texans a little bit of trouble, offensive or defensive to offense. I think overall this might be a lower scoring matchup than it usually is. Typically these two teams are firing it at all cylinders and scoring shootouts, but I think Marlon Mack this week, I just have a feeling he's going to have a good week here. He's my number 13. Moving on to number 14, Devonta Freeman, a guy that has been just on the rise in the last 4 weeks. Double-digit fantasy points, had 2 receiving touchdowns this past Sunday against the Cardinals. In terms of his production against the Rams, I always say it, the Rams are not good at covering receiving backs. And what have we seen from Devonta Freeman? Where has he been most successful thus far this season? It is in the receiving game. He continues to see a lot of targets out of the backfield. Sure, this last week, only 3 targets, 3 receptions, but still 2 touchdowns. The couple weeks before, 8 targets, 7 targets. That's exactly what you want to see from a guy like Devonta Freeman. Get himself implemented outside of just between the tackles, get him into open field, be able to take care of matchups against linebackers. And he's my number 14 this week at home in a good, fiery shootout of a matchup. All right, moving on to number 15, Aaron Jones. I know he disappointed many of us last night on Monday Night Football, but the game that Jamaal Williams had was intended for Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones just didn't get those carries. I promise you, if Aaron Jones is given those carries, he's going to have that game. But we have to take into account going forward now, with Jamaal Williams' presence and the game that he had last night, that Aaron Jones isn't going to be that RB1 that we wished he was going to be. After that 4-touchdown game, we were celebrating, popping bottles. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So going forward, as of right now, we're going to just keep him at an RB2 because that's what he is. So he sits at number 15 against the Raiders. Not a bad matchup at all. 50-50 contributions out of that backfield in terms of, work at the passing game, on the ground, goal line work, etc. Either way, I think Aaron Jones, not a bad play. He's my number 15. Moving on to number 16, Tevin Coleman. And Matt Breida, number 17. I usually have both these guys next to each other very often because I think to myself, who's more capable of having that big play, or who's more capable of having more fantasy points on a given week? And I really do believe they're almost identical. So what we've seen thus far, especially this past week, Tevin Coleman dominated snaps in terms of offensive snap percentage from the running back position, played about 55%, while Matt Breida is sitting at about 37-38% in the last 2 weeks. So what have we seen? We've seen Tevin Coleman definitely take the lead in terms of this backfield. Therefore, he's ahead of him at one spot. But they get to play against the Redskins. Not a great defense. Not a great team at all. They're going to blow out this team. And I really do believe guys like Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida are going to be great this week. Therefore, they are sitting here at the RB2 spots at my number 16 and 17. Great matchup. And it should be easy pickings for them. Moving on to number 18, Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram, again, RB2, always has that potential of getting that goal line touchdown. What we saw this past week was pretty insane. We knew that the Cincinnati Bengals gave up a bunch of points to opposing running backs. But instead, it was Lamar Jackson who had all the rushing yards for the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of designed runs for him. A lot of options with Willie Snead motioning across the formations, pulling guards. A lot of pistol with tight end sets, which is either king or queen. Okay, doesn't matter. The whole point of it was there were a lot of designed runs for Lamar Jackson, which definitely hurts a guy like Mark Ingram. I thought Mark Ingram was going to have a top 12 week this past week. Unfortunately, wasn't just given enough opportunity on the ground, which he definitely would have been able to, at least find something and makes it a pretty successful day. But Lamar Jackson ate all of that up. So going forward, because of that potential, because of the matchup, he sits at number 18. Pretty good. He's a start. Moving on, 19, Kerryon Johnson. Besides the touchdown, That's pretty much what saved his week. Kerryon Johnson's not looked good in terms of his yards per carry average thus far this season. Has to play against the Vikings this week. Not a favorable matchup unless Kerryon Johnson's getting work in the passing game. Very concerned. And they also have, J.D. McKissick in that backfield taking work at the passing game. Very concerning. But again, I mean, this is a guy that is going to be given the goal line carries. I think he has 7 carries inside the 5-yard line thus far this season. So as of right now, Kerryon Johnson should be good to go. He's my number 19. Tough matchup again. Okay, so we're talking about number 20, Jordan Howard. All right, Jordan Howard gets played against the Cowboys. Cowboys defense has been exposed in the last couple of weeks. Cowboys in general as a team have been exposed. Jordan Howard is the RB1 of the Eagles. Sure, Miles Sanders has gotten some work, and we're going to talk about him later today because he gets a lot of work in the passing game, and he's been able to find a lot of success there. But again, Jordan Howard's going to get the goal line work. Jordan Howard is the goal line back. He is the first and second down back of said team of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think going forward into this matchup should have himself a pretty easy game. He's my number 20. Moving on to 21, Carlos Hyde coming off a monster week. I do believe that if, in fact, this offense is going to produce, it's going to be through the air this week rather than on the ground. But there's always a potential. Carlos Hyde has, 26 carries this past week. If they want to feed him like that again, I don't think he's going to find as much success. But again, I think he is continued to see a lot of touches in this backfield or an ample amount to where Duke Johnson pretty much worthless unless he gets a touchdown. And it's bringing me a lot of confidence in Carlos Hyde going forward. He's my number 21. Number 22, Frank Gore. Like I mentioned, it's going to be between him and Singletary. And I don't know exactly where it's going to go, and I don't know exactly who's going to get the touchdowns, but I know Frank Gore is a starter, and I know it's a really easy matchup. So I know one of them is going to have a good game. I'm going to, as of right now, claim and believe in Frank Gore, but Singletary is not too far behind, and we'll go over that in a bit. But either way, against the Dolphins, it's free. It's literally free. So he should be good. Number 23, we have Sony Michel against the Jets. Sony Michel, I think the last time he played against the Jets, he had 15 carries, 15 yards. I have to actually, I got to confirm this, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Sony Michel stats. So, if I'm not mistaken. So, against the Jets, he had 9 carries for 11 yards last time, and he had a touchdown. As of right now, I think this is going to be a more competitive game. That's exactly what the Patriots need. They need a little bit more competition in order to, put their team to the test. You need a stress test. Hopefully this is going to be one of those. I do believe the Patriots are going to win. I do believe Sony Michel is going to get enough carries. The issue is if Tom Brady's every week is going to be diving into the end zone, stealing touchdowns, if Brandon Bolden is going to be a vulture, if the fullback, I know Devlin's not there, but if the other fullback's going to come in and steal a touch, or if Rex Burkhead's going to return, or if James White's going to return, it all does not help Sony Michel. So Sony Michel can't be anything better than, the fringe RB2, RB3 spot. Therefore, he sits here. Even though it's a decent matchup, I just, you can't trust it at some point. Therefore, he sits at 23. Moving on to 24. Austin Ekeler. All right, so the Titans. The Titans are really good against the run. And I do believe that in terms of the Chargers' offensive line and them running the ball, they don't exist. They don't even have offensive linemen when they try to run the ball. It doesn't exist. So, this is my thought process. As of right now, in this week, the Chargers, they don't want to win games. They're going to be behind. And probably the likelihood is they're going to have to throw to get back into this game. Austin Ekeler, sure, he fumbled last week, but he had 11 targets in the passing game, only 4 receptions. If we could turn that 4 into an 8, we have far more production from a guy like Austin Ekeler. And I do believe this is going to be a game in which they really can't run the ball, and they're going to have to pass. Sure, Melvin Gordon does get work in the passing game. He's going to continue to get more work, but Austin Ekeler is typically seeing a lot of work as of right now out of the backfield. Again, 2 weeks removed from 15 receptions in a single game. So let's not forget that. All right, moving on to number 25 through 36, my RB3s on the week. Number 25, LeSean McCoy. All right, so here's the thing about LeSean McCoy as of right now. All right, give me a second, guys. I actually have to check something because as of right now, I have to confirm that my system's still recording. Okay, cool. I don't know why my recording system gave me an error code or something. All right, no problem. So, as I was saying, LeSean McCoy sits at number 25. The only issue is I am afraid that this is a running back by committee in Kansas City. If that is the case, LeSean McCoy has the most value because he has technically seen the most amount of touches in the last couple of weeks. He has the comfortable place in Andy Reid's heart. There's a reason why they went and acquired this guy. As of right now, I don't like the matchup against Denver, but I do believe that if there is a running back to have value from this Kansas City team this week, it is LeSean McCoy, far and away. Therefore, he sits at 25. Moving on to 26, we have Melvin Gordon. Like I was mentioning a little bit before, I'm a little bit concerned about the Chargers' backfield against the Titans this week. Therefore, Melvin Gordon takes a little bit of a slide down this list. I understand, many of us drafted him thinking we would get Melvin Gordon of last year, but the Chargers are not the same. They are nowhere even remotely close to where they were offensively, and that's unfortunate. But as of right now, we have to adjust accordingly. I would love to see Melvin Gordon have a big game soon, but I don't think this is the week. He's at 26. Moving on to 27, Joe Mixon again. Joe Mixon has a good matchup against the Jaguars. I just don't trust Joe Mixon. I just don't trust the offensive line going forward, and the offense in general. Andy Dalton's not great. They don't have AJ Green coming back. Potentially they could trade him. Overall, the offense just not productive enough, and they don't get enough work in the running game in general and feeding him enough to give me a reason to start him. Therefore, he sits at this RB3 range. And that's as much as I could do for Joe Mixon right now. He's 27. Moving on to 28. Like I was mentioning before, Phillip Lindsay is going to have a pop-off game. That means Royce Freeman is going to be able to pick up some scraps here and there. As he sees a pretty good amount of carries on a weekly basis. Royce Freeman has been an 8 to 10 point fantasy guy almost all season long in half-point PPR scoring formats. Sees some work in the passing game. Royce Freeman is not a bad option. The issue is if Royce Freeman had the backfield to himself, or if Lindsay had the backfield to himself wholly as 3-down backs, these guys would be so much better. But because they split, it hurts them. Either way, I do think this is a great matchup in the Broncos versus Chiefs game. If Royce Freeman comes up with a touchdown, that'll be his first of the season and would be extremely beneficial for him. A guy that, as a flex play, RB3, not bad. He's my number 28. Moving on to 29, Devin Singletary. Again, I do expect Frank Gore to have majority of the production and or opportunity, but when this game gets late and when the offense begins to have a pretty big lead, they're going to feed the ball to Devin Singletary, and he's going to torch his defense. We could see a performance like how we did against the Dallas Cowboys versus Miami, where Zeke, he ran for 100 yards, but then we have Tony Pollard coming out and running for 100 yards himself. This is what I anticipate. Sure, I have him at 29, but this is a conservative prediction. Expect Devin, Singletary to have something big this week. Hopefully. As long as he practices and he's fully healthy, we're good to go. Moving on to 30, Jamaal Williams. Now, I do believe Jamaal Williams' game last night was not a fluke. It's bound to happen, right? Bound to happen that one of these guys always has a breakout game, potentially both of them. But going forward, having, what was it like? At one point he had like 6 rushes for 77 yards. Like that's not going to be sustainable. I do believe he's a good running back. He's a better pass blocking back. As of right now, after Aaron Jones dropped that pass in the end zone, he's a better receiving back than Aaron Jones. And that might be a little, overzealous, but you know what I'm talking about, right? The whole point is Jamaal Williams, going forward, not a bad option. Just putting it out there, my number 30 on the week. Moving on to 31, James White. Again, White, 10 points per game every week. That's what we expect. That's what you're going to get. Therefore, he sits at 31. No secret behind it. He's always going to be Tom Brady's third down option, especially if he needs that first down. James White always gets it done. He's my number 31, especially with Rex Burkhead continuing to be out. It only helps him. All right, moving on to 32. David Montgomery. This week, not excited about the matchup. Have to play against the Saints. Saints aren't giving up many points to opposing running backs on the ground. David Montgomery has not been given an ample amount of touches on a consistent basis. Sure, we've seen some, bursts of opportunity here and there, but nothing convincing. As of this moment in time, against the Saints, not too convinced about playing David Montgomery. He is an RB3 flex play if, in fact, you are looking into that as a potential. If he can get some more work in the passing game, which I doubt because of Tariq Cohen's existence, he would be more valuable. But as of right now, we're just going to play it safe. Montgomery's in my 32. Moving on to 33, Miles Sanders. Speaking of guys that get involved in the passing game, but only get involved in the passing game, we have Miles Sanders running literal wheel routes all day long. That's all he does. He runs wheel routes. He runs to the sideline and up, and no linebacker can keep up with him. Therefore, he continues to score, which is incredible. If I'm not mistaken, I have to actually find the stat. All right, let's find Mr. Miles Sanders' stat, shall we? Actually, I can't do that. Let's just leave that. Either way, if I'm not mistaken, since there's an issue. Don't worry about it. If I'm not mistaken, since week 2, Miles Sanders has caught at least like 3 or 4 passes a game for the Philadelphia Eagles every single game. So that's exactly what I anticipate seeing. Does he find a lot of production against the Cowboys? Potentially. This team is not, playing well defensively, and there could be an opportunity for Miles Sanders to have a good game and be a pretty contributing factor on this offense. We thought to ourselves, if they have no Deshaun Jackson and they're not going to use as much Nelson Aguilar as we anticipated, who's going to step up? We obviously see that it's Miles Sanders. He's my number 33. Moving on to 34. I have Damien Williams here. I do not believe he's going to completely disappear, but if in fact he does, I won't be surprised. 1 rush, only 1 reception on 1 target this past week against the Texans. Looks like he's in the doghouse, but I don't think he did anything wrong. Unfortunately, this is the situation that we're in. For those of you who own Damien Williams, we hold on to him for right now, and we pray that he potentially gets more opportunity going forward. But for right now, not a safe play into a tough matchup on a short week. He's my number 34. Moving on to 35, Chris Thompson, the only running back from the Redskins I want to start this week. In the matchup against the 49ers, I do believe Adrian Peterson is going to get shut down. I do believe Case Keenum is going to have to come out and have to pass the ball in order to be competitive. Terry McLaurin, Chris Thompson, the only possible options within this offense that I'm interested in this week. Therefore, Chris Thompson sits at 35. And the last running back on my top 36 list for week 7, Kenyan Drake, Miami Dolphins. There is a running back by committee being built in that backfield. Kenyan Drake, Kalen Ballage, Mark Walton. But as of right now, this is an NFL team. They always will have the potential to, score a touchdown or have a big play. And if anybody's going to have it, it's Kenyan Drake. There are a lot of other names in terms of running backs that I could have named here, but truly, I'm not interested in them. I would rather play Kenyan Drake than a lot of these other guys because they just don't seem like enticing options. Maybe Nyheim Hines. That's the only one that I probably consider that I don't see on today's list that I did not put here. And there's a reason why I have Nyheim Hines here because I'm still questioning whether or not he'll end up there. But again, rankings are always subject to change. All right, that's it, everybody. This was my Week 7 running back rankings for the starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't yet already, click that like button. Click the subscribe button. Comment down below. I'm sure somebody down there would love to answer one of your questions if you need advice, such like that. If you need my private advice, go to my Patreon. It's down in the description link. $5 a month, unlimited questions, private live streams every week, weekly rankings for flex, updated rankings, etc. Get all of that locked down. Also, make sure you guys head over back here on Sunday mornings, 8:30 a.m. PST, live streams, answering questions, stuff like that. Otherwise, I will see you guys later today as we are doing the wide receiver strength of schedule for the rest of the season. I'm sure, by popular demand, a lot of you guys were asking about it from yesterday's video, so we'll get into that. But anyway, thank you, everybody, and until tomorrow or next video, I'll see you guys. Peace.